Hello crafty friends, it's Alicia of the Call Me Crafty Al YouTube channel, and in today's video I'm going to be sharing with you the last card I created as an alternative using the October 2019 paper pumpkin kit. I hope you'll stick around and see what I made. Thank you so much for stopping by today. If this is your first time visiting my channel, I hope by the end of this video that you'll be inspired to click on that subscribe button below and maybe even tap on that bell for notifications. And if you're already a subscriber and regular viewer, welcome back. I'm so glad that you're here. Like I mentioned in the intro, this is going to be the last alternative that I create this month using the October 2019 paper pumpkin kit. So far this month, I have created 5 cards that I've shared videos for here on my channel. The first one was just a real quick run through of how you create the card using the instruction in the kit. And then I created 4 alternatives. I have a winter scene shaker card. I have the second one where I created a custom wood plank background. On the third card, I used 3 of the cards from the kit to create a 3D effect on that winter scene. And then finally, I created this card using some of the scraps from the kit. I added glitter to where the birds are on that red die cut piece that came with it. I will have all of these linked in the description box below if you want to go check them out. On today's card, I will be using only the stamp set and the ink spot from the kit. This is just to show you that even after all of the supplies in the kit are gone, that you can still use these for other things. Before I get too far into the video, I do have one request for you. Today I'm going to be linking a couple Stampin' Up! Products, and if you don't already have a demonstrator and you are inspired to go buy these, I would really appreciate you considering using my friend as your demonstrator for your order. Some of you might be surprised to learn that I do not sell Stampin' Up!, even though I love to play with their kits and share this with you each month here on YouTube. But I do have a really good friend, I've mentioned her before, Danni, who is a demonstrator and would love to have your business if you so choose. Her full name and the state she lives in will be linked in the description box below if you choose to use her as your demonstrator. I do want to say thank you for even considering it. Before I get started with the process, I'm going to go over the supplies that I'm going to mainly be using today. Anything that I don't mention now that I bring out, I will make sure to let you know in the voiceover. And speaking of voiceover, once I start the process, I will go to just a voiceover. If I leave you with any questions, make sure to leave those in the comment section below, and I'll get back to you just as soon as I can. So like I said before, I will only be using the stamp set and the ink spot from the kit. The ink spot is Night of Navy, and from the stamp set, I'm going to be using the kind of dotted snow background, the snowflake, and the sentiment that says wishing you a Merry Christmas and a very Happy New Year. Sorry, I haven't used it yet, so I wasn't sure what it said. So for my non-kit items, I do have a couple Stampin' Up! Things. The first one are the stitched nested labels. I have had these on my wish list since they came out, and I finally recently broke down and bought them, and I cannot wait to use them. What it is, I just love this fun shape, and it has stitching on the inside and outside, and these all nest together. For today's card, I will be using the second one here and the third one here. Also from Stampin' Up! Is this silver metallic thread. I have already used it on a couple cards this month, but I was going to use it again today. This item is actually under $5, and I actually won this on a giveaway on the Creative Chelsea channel here on YouTube. I'll link her below. She does some awesome alternatives as well. For my second ink, I'll be using my Versamark Dazzle, and I'm going to be embossing in some silver. For cardstock, I got out a scrap of white cardstock, a scrap of silver cardstock, and then my friend Danni was nice enough to bring me a Night of Navy piece of cardstock that I will be using for the card base and maybe some of the die cutting. I'm not 100% yet. Let's go ahead and get started. I started today's card by stamping the custom background. I just inked up the snowflake stamp multiple times in the Night of Navy and went kind of diagonally across the page, and when I finished one diagonal line, I would come back and start another one and kind of filling in the open areas. Now, creating stamp backgrounds like this is not something I do very often. I bet I could count on my hand how many times I have done this. So any tips I give today, you're welcome to take what you want and totally leave behind what you don't. Once I had those full strength snowflakes stamped, I then started putting in some stamped off versions in some of the open areas. Now I know I could have probably done this all at the same time and just used the stamp off from the original stamp, but I was not confident enough in my pattern paper making skills to just do it all at once. Because this piece of cardstock is larger than I will need for my final card, I did only do that stamping off on about half of the piece of cardstock. The final dimensions of this piece are 3 3/4 inches wide by 5 inches tall. While I had my trimmer out, I went ahead and cut my silver cardstock. Now it is actually face down just because it messes with the camera lights, but this piece was cut to 3 7/8 by 5 1/8 inches. Next, the piece of navy cardstock was cut in half to 5 1/2 by 8 1/2 and then folded for a standard card base. Because the paper pumpkin kit had some silver foiling in it, I decided that I wanted to go ahead and bring in some silver embossing. So I inked up the kind of dotted, snowy looking stamp with Versamark, and then I added the silver embossing powder on that. Now you'll notice I don't have enough silver embossing powder to do it all at once. I do have to keep putting my embossing powder back into my container, and that is why that little tray is so handy. Once that was all stamped and had the embossing powder added, I then heat set it with my heat gun. Next up is stamping the sentiment. I decided that I wanted to put a stamped off snowflake in the background of the silver embossed sentiment, so I did that on the back of my scrap of cardstock, and then I just do the same thing with the embossing powder and heating it up. For the die cutting, I got out my Scotch Blue removable tape and I placed my smaller die around the sentiment where I thought it looked good. Now you will notice that my sentiment is to the left of the die cut, and that's because here in a little bit I will actually be cutting a lot off of the right before I place it on the card. Once I had my sentiment die cut, I then cut with the larger label die out of the Night of Navy cardstock. Once the die cutting was done, it was time to start putting my card together. The first thing I did was adhere my pattern paper piece to the silver foil cardstock, and then I pulled out my big blue roll of foam tape because I wanted this piece to be just kind of lifted up off the card base a little bit. This blue tape is so economical. I do have it linked below if you want to go check it out. Once my pattern paper was on the front of the card, I then went to work on the sentiment tag. You'll see here that I went ahead and adhered those two pieces flat together and then trimmed off that extra white on the right side of the tag. Now before I put it down onto my card, I am going to make kind of a little twine nest on the background, and what I did was just cut off a length of that silver metallic thread, and then I just went with my fingers around, just kind of putting it wherever I wanted it, making sure in the middle that I got it stuck to the adhesive. I'm not sure if there's any rhyme or reason to this, but it worked for me. This piece then got adhered with the mini dimensionals that came with the kit to the right side of the card, and you'll notice the way I placed it, it kind of looks like it's falling off the right edge. That is why I trimmed off that extra. Once this was done, I decided that it needed a little something else, so I pulled out my red gems because there was some red in the kit with the red birds, and I added 5 of those to the card front. And here's some close-up looks at the card. I hope you liked that look at how I created my last alternative for the month. If you did, as always, I appreciate a thumbs up. Until my next video, I hope you're having a crafty day. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch all the way to the end of the video. I hope that you'll consider clicking on one of the videos or playlists I have linked above, and if you're interested in any of the products or tools that I use in the video, I do have some links in the description box.